Thank you. I'd like to call this meeting of the Pinetop-Lakeside Town Council to order. We have a quorum. I would ask that you stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance, and please remain standing for the invocation. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Councilor Buse.
Our Father who art in heaven, we're indeed grateful for this opportunity we have to meet here this evening. We're thankful for this beautiful community of which we are a part, and we're grateful for the interest that those who are members of the community take in this great community to keep it the community that it is. We are grateful for our staff with the town, and we're grateful for all of our first responders and pray that would watch over and protect them. We're thankful for the moisture which we have received, and we pray now that there will be a spirit of cooperation and understanding here this evening in this meeting, and ask these blessings in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you, Councilor Buse. Item B on our agenda tonight is call to the public. This is a business meeting of the Town Council. The town values and welcomes public input. Please address the council as a whole and not individual council members. Do not address staff or members of the audience. Council action on items brought up in call to the public is limited by the open meeting law. The council may direct staff to study the matter and reschedule for further consideration at a later date. Items on the agenda are not heard in call to the public, and individuals are limited to 3 minutes. I don't have any requests for speaking. Okay, so then we'll move on to item C, which is our consent agenda. All items listed are considered routine matters and will be enacted by one motion of the council. There will be no separate discussion of these items unless a member of the council requests that an item or item be removed for discussion. Council members, however, may ask questions without removal of the item from the consent agenda, and items removed are considered in their normal sequence. We have 2 items tonight. Item C1, there is one small correction on the minutes. Is that correct, Christy? On the resolution. Okay, I'm sorry. So we do have 2 items. Is there any questions or discussion? Vice Mayor?
I move that we approve the consent agenda as presented.
Second.
Thank you. It's been moved and seconded to approve the consent agenda. All those in favor, please signify by raising your right hand. Thank you. That passes unanimously. We'll move on then to item D, which is business before the council. Public comment will be taken at the beginning of each agenda item after the subject has been announced by the mayor and explained by staff. Any citizen who wishes may speak one time for 5 minutes on each agenda item, either before or after council discussion. Questions from council members, however, may be directed to staff or a member of the public through the mayor at any time. Item D1 tonight is a presentation and background on Arizona State Proposition number 310. Mr. Clay Wallace, if you would come on up.
Mayor Irwin, council members, thank you so much for having me tonight. My name is Clay Wallace. I'm here on behalf of the White Mountain Firefighters Association right here in the White Mountains. Special 2 guests we have with us is Assistant Chief Randy Chevalier from Timber Mesa Fire and Assistant Chief Josh Livermore from Timber Mesa Fire. I want to give you guys a quick presentation on Proposition 310, which is the Arizona Fire District Safety Act. If you have any questions throughout, please let me know. I want to make this a discussion as much as we can, as much as it can be. And without further ado, we'll get started. Maybe. Okay, so Arizona's fire districts are in crisis, and we're really in a really bad shape right now. And what does that mean? Why is that a problem? So fire districts in Arizona, our primary revenue source is through property. So there's some restrictions on property. One of those being our levy rate. We can only have a certain amount, and that's capped. But really 2 of the big pieces that restricts our fire district funding is the Great Recession that we had back in 2007, 2008, where we had our property values decreased by almost 50%. And another big piece, Prop 117 that came in 2015, essentially the short of it is that made it so that way there could only be a 5% increase to our property values at that time. So even if a home appreciated by 20, 25%, we were capped at a 5% increase to that, which created that restriction to fire district funding. Some statistics for you, so we can realize what does that really mean when it comes down to each individual fire district. So a few examples up on the board here. Mayor Fire District in 2008, their budget was $2.7 million and had a call volume of 1,348. In 2020, 12 years later, their budget decreased to $2.4 million and their call volume almost doubled to 2,359. And as you see the other two up there, very similar stories. Superstition Fire District, $14.5 million, 8,000 calls. Budget increased slightly to $16.5 million with their call volume just under 10,000. Again, Drexel Heights, $13.2 million, 7,000 calls, and their budget of $11 million with their call volume of 7,800. So what does that mean? That means we have to do more with less. And so it became a real problem for Arizona's fire districts, and the problem is only compounded over time. So it's a real problem, and it exists today, and this does not account for some of the inflation that we've seen in those challenges there. So what does revenue decrease mean? Well, that means we have decreased staffing, decreased stations and equipment. So as the customers, as residents of Arizona or visitors here, to you, that means you get firefighter reduction in staffing. So Bullhead City Fire District had a decrease in staffing of 23%. Summit Fire is reduced to 20%, and Sun City to 19%, Daisy Mountain 15%. And those are huge numbers. Really, I want you guys to really think about what that impact looks like in our communities and as our loved ones travel up and down the roadways. And again, if we have decrease in staffing, that means we're going to have longer response times. So I had a question the other day. Somebody asked me, well, what does 1 or 2 minutes or 30 minutes, what does that really mean when you think about it? And what I would challenge that person at the time was, well, if you hold your breath for 2 minutes, does it mean a lot to you then? So when we talk about those long response times in fire districts in the rural Arizona, we have response times up to 30 minutes or longer. So those firefighters and their paramedics, that reduced staffing, that problem gets put onto the visitors of Arizona and those Arizonans that live within there. We have fire stations that are closed and all those different pieces. And something else to consider is Arizona's fire districts also respond to wildfires and the suppression of those wildfires. So if we don't have the manpower to staff those trucks and send them out, that's a real problem for us. And again, we talked about how it impacts everybody. So whether you know it or not, there's 144 fire districts in Arizona, and some good things to think about because not everyone realizes what's a fire district and where they are. So for example, if we were to leave Pinetop and you're going to drive to the valley, many people don't understand how many fire districts they go through. So for example, we'll start up here at Pinetop. We go through Pinetop Fire District, through Timber Mesa Fire District, Pinedale Clay Springs Fire District, Heber Overguard Fire District, Christopher Coles Fire District, and Hell's Gate Fire District in Star Valley. And that's just to get to Payson. So a lot of people don't understand all of these fire districts that they drive through. And what does that mean? So fire districts provide service to 1.5 million residents statewide. We provide 911 paramedic ambulance services through about 60 communities, and we're the primary service provider to 20 Arizona cities and towns. Again, we talked about wildfire suppression, and then something else to consider is our state highway system. We talked about travel on the roadway and what that looks like for injuries and, unfortunately, deaths. So over the last 5 years, we've had nearly 2,000 travelers that have been killed in vehicle crashes on Arizona's rural roads, and over 30,000 have been injured. And that, to me, that means when I'm at work or I'm at home or my loved ones are traveling on the roadway, that's a real problem that we have. The motor vehicle accidents in Arizona are an issue. And when your emergency is going on, that's the most important thing. And when the firefighters out there in Arizona are responding, you want them there as quick as you can. Some more statistics here. We talk about wildfires. Over the last 5 years, fire districts alone have helped fight wildfires that have destroyed more than 2.2 million acres. So that's recreation areas, that's communication infrastructure, that's water issues, there's Obviously, homes involved and injuries and death and all of those things that fire districts help fight those wildfires. We talked a little bit about water. So wildfires can directly impact our water in the valley area. When those wildfires happen, they destroy vegetation. We get water runoff and ash or heavy metals and organic materials that flow into those rivers and reservoirs that go into our water supply. For example, Salt and Verde Rivers, Lake Roosevelt, SRP, all of those areas are impacted by those wildfires and the water that we use. And again, we talk about communication infrastructure. If we have a wildfire that destroys communication, it's a big deal for us. When we pick up the phone, we expect that phone to work each and every time. So when our emergency is happening, we can expect that phone call to go through. That's important for us, right? Well, when those fires happen and they destroy those communication infrastructure and you can't get out, that's a really big deal. So 911 services, our power grid, Arizona EOC network, and FirstNet for our first responders. At this time, I'd like to bring up Chief Chevalier and Chief Livermore. They had some stuff they wanted to discuss specifically on Timber Mesa Fire Medical District and how Prop 310 might affect them and what that looks like.
Madam Mayor, members of the Town Council, thanks for having us. This is an important topic, obviously, to fire districts. The town of Pinetop-Lakeside is obviously covered by 2 different fire districts that are both impacted by Prop 310. And as Clay Wallace kind of alluded to, there's 144 fire districts across the state, and a lot of them are in crisis. And I would say that Timber Mesa and Pinetop, and I can really speak to only Timber Mesa, we struggle in certain areas. And when we're talking about net assessed evaluation, or we're talking about revenue that's coming into the fire district, we're limited. We're limited through one single source of revenue coming in, and it kind of boxes us in. And much like the town, or much like our own personal finances, we really want to focus on trying to diversify that. So we're not just independent, or I should say dependent on one source of revenue. So we're really hopeful, right, for Prop 310, and what can it do for us as a fire district? You can look at the numbers on the board for Timber Mesa, and this is what's projected. Potentially additional revenue of $4.5 million coming into the fire district. There's some caveats with that $4.5 million. This sales tax revenue, which is definitely a sales tax, is based on, you guys are very familiar with sales tax, how much people are paying, right? Buying, where are they buying it at? Well, this is across the state, but it's also tied to our net assessed valuation. If our net assessed valuation takes a dip, we might not actually see $4.5 million, or if the sales don't occur, we might not see $4.5 million. So it's not necessarily a guarantee, but it'll absolutely add some revenue into the fire district. So what would we spend the money on? Well, we're going through several different processes right now trying to determine what's going to be the best source. We always try to take a conservative approach, but we don't want to start saying, hey, we're going to rely on this money and start budgeting towards that direction until it actually comes to fruition. But things that are needed for our fire district, much like the town, I got to believe, is capital infrastructure, fire stations, fire equipment, ambulances. One of the examples that I've been using recently is the cost of an ambulance. As you all know, we have a CON. We run 6 full-time ambulance crews in our fire district. We run around 9,000 calls per year. Many of those calls are interfacility transport from Summit to Valley Hospitals, to Tucson, to Flagstaff, and we're putting a lot of miles on our ambulances. The average cost of an ambulance today, we just ordered, actually we've ordered the last year and a half, about 3. We're still waiting for a couple to come in. There are supply chain issues and they take a while to come in, but 2 years ago, when we ordered one of the first of the 3 ambulances, it was about $180,000. The third one that is placed on order is now $225, and we're all feeling the effect of inflation. And so I would suggest to you that that portion of this revenue is going to be applied to some of the capital expenses that are necessary for the fire district. And personnel, right? It's not focused on personnel. Staffing is important to us. As we grow, we see extended response times. There could be the potential of a portion of our districts are left uncovered by long distance of response time. So trying to project out where do we need future fire stations, where do we need to add an additional rescue into the unit or an additional fire station into the system. So that could be the buildup of some infrastructure to help our response times across the fire district. There's just looking at the slide here. One of the pieces that I like best about this particular sales tax initiative is, as I already mentioned, we're funded by property tax. That means everything that happens here is backed by the property owners of this fire district. We all know it. There's a lot of residents that come here. I was chatting with Chief Morgan of Pinetop Fire earlier. Vacation in the Pinetop Country Club sounds like 2 visitors to 1, and maybe I don't have that quite right, but it sounds like there's a lot of visitors coming up here recreating in our area, and they're not helping funding this system. They're relying on us, all of you as taxpayers, to help fund their car accidents that happen, right? Our roads are crowded. Hopefully we can work on some infrastructure to take care of some of those pieces. But every time there's an issue with one of those residents, that's funded by us as taxpayers, us, those local residents. So I'm really encouraged by helping to spread that load out, share that burden with all the residents coming and visiting in our beautiful area. Chief Livermore, you have anything further to add on the fire district? And I would love to answer whatever questions you may have. I'm obviously here representing the fire district. So if you have questions about Timber Mesa, please ask away. Chief?
So I have a question. Well, first of all, a comment. Those seasonal residents that own homes here are paying property taxes to Timber Mesa or Pinetop Fire. So they are contributing to that. But I guess my question is, under your current budget constraints, I assume you have a staffing level. What is your vacancy rate right now? And we struggle with our PD most frequently is getting recruits in. So what is your vacancy rate? What's your, where are you with that?
So Timber Mesa, we definitely have some constraints on revenue, as Clay alluded to. Recruitment and retention is definitely a problem that we're experiencing. Full-time staff for Timber Mesa, we're budgeted for 87 positions. And correct me if I'm wrong, I think we're down 2 right now. We apologize. 2.
So you have 2 vacancies, essentially.
Yes, sir. 2 vacancies currently right now. So over the course of time, however, we just finished up a recruit academy. That recruit academy, we did a bit of an overhire with that recruit academy, kind of anticipating some retention loss. And we overhired by 3 into that recruit academy. With that overhire, now we're back down to less, we're below staffing of 2 at this point in time.
Okay, thank you. Councilor Watson?
Can you go back to your first slide? I think it was your first or second. And I don't mean to put you on the spot. So if you don't have these answers, you can get them later.
No problem. And back to Madam Mayor, I wasn't necessarily talking about the residents that own property here. It's those coming up and visiting in this area that don't own the property.
So, and what's the next slide? Yeah, so you've got some specific fire districts that you've highlighted here. I'm just curious, the stats on the first slide and the second slide, do you have those numbers for Timber Mesa? In other words,
understood.
The first slide.
Apologize, this one, sir?
Yeah, talked about reduced property values and then limited assessed value increases per year. I mean, just to be honest with you, our property values here have gone skyrocket, right? So when we see these kind of stats, my first response is, that's nuts. Our homes are worth double what they were 5 years ago. But I don't know how that applies to your fire districts or what your limited levy is or any of that. Do you have that? Because it's very, and here's my other, I'm just going to be blunt and honest. My other thing is it's very easy to pick specific examples that are maybe the worst case scenarios and say, this one went down by this amount, this one went down by this amount, but none of them you presented represent our area, right? Those, I mean, I'm assuming you did this for a statewide presentation or something, but.
I live here in
Yeah, but the districts that you represented on the slides are not any of ours.
Correct. They're not here in the White Mountains.
Do we have that same statistical data for our district so that I could say, here's what's happening for us? That's the base of my question. And I don't know if you have that yet.
I don't have, I can't just hand you a piece of paper, didn't I? I apologize for that. Timber Mesa, I should just point out that it's probably unique than some of the districts that are listed on here, right? So in 2008, Timber Mesa didn't exist. So, right, we're talking about Shola Fire, Lakeside Fire, Linden, White Mountain Lakes, that all combined in 2014. So to go back to 2008, I don't have that information. How it's impacting us when we're talking about home values in comparison to market value. There's the legislation that's put in place. Even though our property, my home has to. My home, the market value, I'm astonished at every time I look at it. I'm like, there's no way my home's really worth that much money. But that's what they're saying in the market value. Year over year, when assessed valuations are assessed, my home can only increase by 5%. Should it increase, it can only go up to a max of 5%, if that helps answer your question.
So, yeah, it does. Let me just ask an additional question related to that then. So since Timber Mesa came into being in 2014, the revenues you generated from the property taxes in 2014 versus 2021, or whatever the latest you have, do you know what those numbers, are they up, are they down, are they neutral? Do you have an idea of what those revenues have done?
I would say they're up overall, right? As assessed valuations, we've seen the increase, right? We've seen the property values go up, and ours have climbed with that 5% over the last couple of years. When we first merged, we were flat, right? It was our assessed valuations were not growing, so they were zero, maybe 1 or 2%. And I apologize, I should have came more prepared. I'll get that information to you. We actually have some presentations built off of that where you can see where our revenues have fluctuated over the course of time with Timber Mesa. One of the pieces that we like to point out as Timber Mesa, though, is the efficiencies that created. If we were standalone agencies taxing at the highest tax rate possible during those times, which was $3.25, the collected rate would have been far exceeding what Timber Mesa currently is. Over the course of the first several years of Timber Mesa, year over year, the cost savings was $2 million per year. 5 years in, we were a cost savings of $10 million in comparison to where the fire districts were at that point in time. And I can only speak to Shola Fire. I can promise you that organization would have been taxing at the highest rate, just with some occurrences that were taking place, of course.
And I appreciate that. And that's, I mean, I guess the bottom line, that's kind of what I'm getting at is, the consolidation of those various small districts into one larger one, I think has been a good thing. And I've heard those numbers as far as
I'm very biased. It's a very good thing.
I've heard those numbers as far as savings. So, I'm not in Timber Mesa, but I appreciate what they've been able to do. But that's where, just to be honest, when you hear, oh, we did this, we had all this savings, we're doing great things, but now we want more money, it just kind of goes sideways, right? So if you can provide me kind of that data from 14 to 18, or 14 to 21 or 22, whatever you have, not only the revenues, but your expenditures and how that's changed and capital needs and that kind of stuff. That would be helpful for me at least.
Absolutely. We can do that.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions for Brandon?
And I'm sure you had the call volume. That would be something that is easily produced, I bet.
Yes, absolutely. Call volume last year was up 30%, and we're trending to be just above that for this year.
Okay. Any other questions? I guess that is a great presentation. Thank you for that information. Yes, Clay.
Mayor, and I apologize. Do I have a little more information to present
Sure,
if I
go
have
ahead.
a couple more minutes?
Go ahead. Go
I
right ahead,
apologize. Mayor Irwin, Councilman Watson, thank you so much for your questions. Those are great questions. I wanted to touch really quick on something that you had mentioned. So the legislation funding, so just so everybody understands, so in 2015, Prop 117 limited it to 5% increase. So in 2007, 2008, we had bottomed out real estate prices. Fast forward several years later to 2015, and those property values were still bottomed out. So then through the legislation, we could only grow by 5% each year thereafter. So it took years to get to that point, and then we slowly kind of grown. So you look at the past 12 years, from 2008 to 2020, or 2020, sorry, like the slide had shown, and that was the impact of that. Does that kind of answer that a little more? Some of the restriction? Really good questions.
So it can go down as fast as the economy goes down, but it can only go up as 5%.
Correct. So that happened in 2007, 2008, 2009. When that happened, we had fire districts lose 50% of their revenue overnight, right? And imagine what you do that to your personal finances or in the city or whatever that might look like. For fire districts, it's unique because we certainly can drop 50%, but you can only grow 5% each year. So it could take a long time to just recover to where you were before. Does that make a little more sense?
10 years.
Thank you, Chief Chevalier. Get back here, I apologize. Okay, so we talked about the problem a little bit. What's the solution? What's the solution to this problem? And really, what it comes down to, Proposition 310 is 1/10 of 1 penny, which is, in layman's terms, and what that means to you as a consumer is 1 penny for every $10 you spend. So if you go out to lunch, you're looking at a penny. That's what that impact looks like. And something I really want to express to you that Chief Chevalier had mentioned was we have a lot of visitors up here to the White Mountains, and a lot of those visitors don't have property up here, so they don't pay property tax. So I just wanted to stress that. So us as, and I'll use myself as an example, because like I said, I live here in the White Mountains. We pay property taxes to the fire district, and as those residents come through the area, as property owners, I don't want to say subsidize, but we essentially provide that service for those visitors as they drive through the communities. And that burden is placed on the property owners. And what this is designed to do, so Prop 310 is a sales tax through across all of the state of Arizona. It's 1/10 of 1 penny. So a penny for every $10 and a dime for every $100 is what that looks like in layman's terms, right? And it's temporary, and we say temporary, it's 20 years. And just the numbers here, so the estimated revenue, we're looking at $150 million in a year. In the first year, and it'll rise to about $250 million in year 20, and that's spread across all 144 fire districts. And I just want to mention this too, and even though this will obviously impact the White Mountains, we travel through the state. If we have family members that come through Arizona or travel on the roadways, this is going to affect all of those fire districts as well. And we're pretty fortunate to have some really strong firefighters here. But again, I would think about that those fire districts are everywhere, and they're not as fortunate, and they see some of those staffing challenges. So we might see 2 here right now today, but those challenges exist everywhere else. So it's distributed proportionally by the net assessed valuation, and it's capped for 3% for any single fire district. So Chief Chevalier had mentioned we'd be looking at an estimate of about $4.5 million for the Timber Mesa Fire District alone, and that'll depend each fire district based on their net assessed value. Yes, sir.
Just a quick question. So this tax the revenue would only be available for districts? This wouldn't be available for municipal or other fire departments?
That's correct. So fire districts is what it's for, and it would be a sales tax just for them.
But the sales tax would be statewide?
It would be spread across the 144 fire districts. Does that answer your question? Statewide sales tax, wherever you purchase anything throughout the state of Arizona, 1/10 of 1 penny is what that would be.
Is there any consideration, having worked for a municipality that ran a fire department and knowing how poor they are, is there any consideration for a portion of that to go to those fire departments versus just districts?
The way it's written, the prop is written right now, is it would only go to fire districts. And in comparison, and I know there's some of the smaller municipalities have those challenges, but we look at some of the larger municipalities in the metro area where they're fortunate to have a lot of funding and be able to do things that fire districts could never approach. And I don't know, Chief Livermore, do you have something?
Josh Livermore, Operations Chief with Timber Mesa. So it's very strategic that way, and it's been authored with the help of the Professional Firefighters Association and some legislators that have helped with this initiative, knowing that fire districts are in a very unique position as far as funding and funding options, right? The municipalities, right? We've seen some of the sales tax stats, recently, and as sales tax climbs across the state, there's an immediate benefit to municipalities, right? Where when property values drop, there's an immediate detriment to fire districts, but the return is very, very slow. It takes a long time to recover from that. That, along with fire districts have not had access to some of the other funding sources that municipalities have, specifically ARPA funding and some of the CARES funding, and fire districts did not receive any of that funding. And so all of that combined to help with an initiative to find another funding option for fire districts. And one of the things we do not want to leave you with we don't want to leave anybody here with the impression that if this doesn't pass, you're not going to get an ambulance, or you're not going to get a fire engine, or you're not going to get a response. The merge consolidation and creation of Timber Mesa was life-saving for the local fire districts. It has been very effective at reducing, right, cost to do business across the White Mountains for the fire district for Timber Mesa, keeping the tax rate fairly reasonable, right, as far as cost to do business. But what we're starting to see cost of business outpace revenue, right? And that's very concerning to fire districts. And there's fire districts across the state that are in far worse position than our fire districts here, and it's a grave concern for many of those fire districts. And so I think, right, our local firefighters group is speaking for all fire districts, and we just want you to know how that would impact our local fire districts and benefit in a way that takes some of the burden and spreads it out across all taxpayers, and not just putting the burden on property tax, property taxpayers.
Councilor Schnitzer?
Yeah, just, I guess a question. A preamble is that, as you know, the town does not have a property tax, so we just live on sales tax. And I believe the fire districts have not had any sales tax in the past. And I understand that you do a lot more than just protect property. But I think the equation has been, since you protect property, we will have the property owners pay for the protection. And so my question is, why is there not a stronger effort to go back and remedy this? I mean, I agree with you. I agree you need funds. But to me, it seems like the more appropriate source would be to go back and fix the property taxes. Is there a parallel effort going on there?
Yeah, I would say there's been efforts ever since it was enacted. There was a very, very strong effort to present an opposing case when it did go in, right, when it did come to the voters. It's very difficult to take something that that obviously went to the voters, was approved by the voters, and try and reverse that. That's a challenge. And so the State Firefighters Union and the Arizona Fire Chiefs and Arizona Fire Districts Association, they work diligently with our legislators to look at all of the options, right? And this is what the product was, as far as looking at what are the options for giving fire districts another revenue source to help keep up with, right, what is the cost of doing business. Our call volume that increased 30% last year, our revenue did not increase 30%, but our workload did. So I would say there's quite a bit of work that goes on at the state level to looking at options, and that's been the discussion, is how to, right, is there a way to reverse that? And the answer has been no.
Well, nobody wants to raise taxes, I understand
Well,
that.
and I think that's the first thing that we would recognize is this is a tax measure. I think most of us, right, are not in favor of more taxes. This one makes sense, right, as far as, helping to
But it's, I mean, you
spread that
can
load out.
see it's a general concern because the school districts, for example, could have the same argument that we should, even though schools have been paid for by the tax dollars, we should now go after sales taxes for schools. And it's I don't know where it stops, finding people that aren't currently funded adequately, and sales tax is where you go because that's what's left. But for the towns, it's the only, I mean, like you have your only sources being property taxes, that the town has pretty limited sources too.
Councilor Heisler?
Yeah, in full disclosure, I'm going to ask some leading questions, but could you explain more about Prop 115 and talk more? We talk about the fire district can get 5% a year. Has the fire district ever realized 5% in a year since Prop 115 was enacted? And talk a little bit about maybe realizing, can you talk a little bit about realizing the decline in growth and how much you realize? And I think that kind of maybe bridges the gap a little bit.
Yeah, so when Prop 115 was enacted, I think 2009, 2010, and limited property growth to, there's a couple things that happened, right? Limited property growth to 5%. It also moved assessment for districts, fire districts. It moved assessment from property value to limited property value. And then reduced it to a 5% cap. It does allow our levy to grow by 8%, but it limits property assessment to 5%. It's very rare to have a year, and I don't know, Chief Chevalier might have more of the historical perspective, but I'm not sure that how many years we've actually had that met a 5% growth. Every assessed property across the district really has to achieve that 5% mark for us to see a 5% increase in levied property taxes. So it is rare, and as stated before, the market value of your home does not necessarily equate to what's actually being assessed and then equating to collected revenue. So it is a challenge, and as I think Councilor Heisler was referring to, was when we see a decline, we can, and I think it's already been stated, but we can definitely see a decline of greater than 5%, right? 10, 20, 50% some years right in the past. And we see that impact almost immediately. The growth obviously takes longer. New property typically takes up to 2 years before we start to see the revenue from new property. So growth is slow. Decline can be very rapid for special districts. Did that answer your question? Or
Yeah, I think a little bit of the point I was trying to get to, and I guess I'll just go to my own knowledge, but I don't remember a single year that Timber Mesa Fire has seen a 5% increase since Timber Mesa's inception. Maybe Chief Chevalier, you might remember that offhand, but the reason for that is because every year the district realizes 100% of the loss of any property value within the district, but it only realizes 5% of the gains. So, and basically what we've seen in years where we thought we would get a tremendous growth, like the whole we're going to definitely get 5% that year. What you've seen is you've gotten a 2.5% or a 1.5% increase because you're realizing 100% of the loss, but only 5% of the gain.
That would be true on existing properties, but any new properties would just come in at the point they were built. They would be appraised at the value as built, right? So new properties would help,
New construction, yeah.
Yeah, new construction. So
You're 100% correct. So Timber Mesa, historically, only the last 2 years we've actually realized 5% or greater, and the 5% is not necessarily based on on that market value going up for the existing homes. It's a lot of it, the reason we've reached that gap going just a little bit above that 5%. I think this year at 5.69% was based on the new construction. That new construction, as Chief Livermore indicated, we've seen some. We've seen a lot in closer to the Linden area in our fire district. That takes about 2 years to hit the tax roll. So we're anticipating that we might continue to see a little bit closer to that 5%, or maybe just edging over that 5%. But it's only been in the last couple of years that we've actually even realized the 5%. In the first few years at Timber Mesa, it's been closer to 0, flat, or 1 or 2% moving forward. But it's kind of rare. Just with the market and everything that's been going on, those assessed valuations going up, that's helped it carry up to that 5%. Going back to Prop 117, when it took effect, not only did it box it in on that scenario, it took the property values to the bottom of the market, what it set it off of. So then your growth, as the numbers that we were kind of talking about earlier, where we see Daisy Mountain, Superstition, some of these organizations are saying they haven't realized that money, they're never going to actually get back to that where you were back in 2008, 2007, before the major crash occurred.
Now, from where we are today, let's say the property values have gone up, but the assessed valuation has not kept track. But now, if the property values drop, but still are way above the assessed valuation, would the assessed valuation still continue to climb at 5% a year, or does it drop too?
I think you're going to start to see it playing off together, and then over the course of time, it's going to start to fall together.
Mm-hmm. Okay, but eventually assessed will catch, unless theoretically, if property values fall fast enough, somehow they'll come together.
Right, and it all depends on how fast that's going to fall.
Okay.
I think there's a lot of conversation, or maybe leaving some fear out there or maybe even a desire of a want to see some property values continue to come down just a little bit. But that depends on how fast that's going to happen. I don't have a crystal ball. I can tell you.
But even if property values come down a little bit next year, let's say, it shouldn't affect the 5% increase that you would get because the assessment would still go up.
Theoretically, no. Yeah, you're correct.
Okay.
And then we're obviously hopeful for growth, right? Because once that new growth occurs and once it hits the tax roll, we're going to realize 100% of that.
Yeah. The new construction
that
is great.
1 year, and then after that, it's going to hit into the market wherever that assessed valuation takes place.
Okay, Vice Mayor?
I have one quick question, and I apologize, I'm not familiar with the proposition enough. Is the 0.1% assessed across the state or just in the districts?
This is a statewide initiative.
Okay, so Maricopa County is going to pay the bulk of this money, probably.
That's correct. Maricopa, Pima County, we're the bulk of the population. They're going to pay the bulk of the funding.
Right. Okay.
Any other questions? You want to finish up, Clay? Yes. You had some more things?
Thank you, Chief. Something I really want to stress to everybody here. So, again, just like Chief Livermore said, Arizona's firefighters, we're going to be there to respond. We're going to be there. We're going to do our best. We're going to work hard. But I don't want to minimize the problem that fire districts have right now and the funding limitation and the challenges that we could see over the next coming years and what that looks like. We talked a lot about the restrictions. And I really want to bring this back home. We're 1/10 of 1 penny. And I know taxes can be a hard subject, but consider, please, the alternatives and consider what that really means in your daily lives. And then again, back to Vice Mayor Smith, his statements. So it's a statewide sales tax. So we look at the population, Maricopa, Pima, and Pinal County, those are going to be the bulk of that. So something you might consider as a fire district resident, it would help those costs to your fire district outside of your direct area. Something to consider also. There's a couple examples on the screen. I'll just kind of move through these. That's an interstate vehicle fire that took a long time to get somebody to respond to it. And there's some communication infrastructure with a wildfire right below it to bring that point home. And again, really, I want to thank you all for the gift of your time, for allowing me to come here and talk to you. Thank you, Chief Livermore, Chief Chevalier, Mayor, members of the council. Really, thank you so much. I appreciate it. Do you have any more questions? Yes, ma'am.
Come up to the podium, please. And introduce yourself.
Holly Johnson. And my question is, you have all these call numbers and the increases in calls. Is there a way to tell, are the increase in calls, are those EMS calls or those fire calls? And is there a price difference or a cost difference for you guys to maintain the fire side versus the EMS side?
Okay, great question. So across the nation, they say 70 to 80% of our call volume is EMS related. So that's those medical incidents that we respond to. So a good majority of those, you could assume, as that number increases, would be those medical incidents, those motor vehicle accidents, those heart attacks, and that genre of call. And I apologize, ma'am. What was the other part of your question?
The cost difference between a medical call and a fire call. Is that correct?
I guess like another qualifier would be, doesn't insurance pay a lot of the EMS calls? If that's your majority, is it medical and auto and all that paying the majority of the costs for that? I mean, I know we live in Timber Mesa, we got in a car accident and I still had to pay, you know what I mean, through our insurance and stuff.
Chief Livermore, Chief Chevalier, you think this might be a better way to answer this?
So as Clay stated, the majority of our calls are EMS related or medical related, whether it's motor vehicle accidents, difficulty breathing, right, traumatic injuries. Somewhere around 78 to 80% of our call volume is medical. If we transport somebody from a medical scene, there is billing involved with that, right? So we do, one of our revenue sources at Timber Mesa is ambulance response and ambulance revenue. So if we transport somebody, we do bill for that service, and it really just depends on the payer, right? As far as what's collected, everything from Blue Cross Blue Shield to Medicare, where we may collect $450 for a transport, if it's Medicare. So it depends on the payer what we collect. As far as the cost to run that call, most fire districts or fire departments operate just like we do. The closest available unit typically is a fire engine from a fire station. Our ambulances are out and they're transporting and they're taking patients off of the hill or off of the mountain down to the valley. So it's very common that our closest unit's going to be a fire engine, and that's what's going to initially respond, start treatment. All of our fire engines bring a paramedic, at least one, and we can start advanced life support. And then if needed, the ambulance will transport, and there is a charge for that. But if we respond to a motor vehicle accident and nobody needs to be transported to the hospital, or we respond to a fall victim and help them back into bed or help them back into their chair, we don't bill for that, right? That's part of fire department response, fire district response. It's part of our services. That being said, the fire side of the response, even though it's a small percentage of our call volume, is a really costly part of doing business. One of the primary reasons why a fire district or a fire department exists is to provide fire service. And even though it's a small percentage, when that happens, when that type of call happens, it's really, really important that we are able to respond, bring enough people to mitigate the emergency, right, that you're having or that our community is suffering from. So there is a cost difference. The fire side of our response is really costly. We do recoup some of the costs for the medical side when we transport patients, but there's a percentage of calls there too that we don't bill for, but we still provide service. That answer? Okay.
Thank you, Chief. Any more questions? Yes, ma'am.
Hi, my name is Janelle. I know none of us love paying taxes at all. So our biggest thing is that we'd love that, again, we don't have our lands. And because Arizona doesn't have their land since 1912, when we were a territory, but when we became a state, the Congress was supposed to go ahead and give us back our lands, to cede our lands back to us. I'm not sure if you guys know that, but if you don't, go to American Lands Council. Our biggest thing is if the state would take back and go after Congress to go get our lands back, all the money that goes to the fire department, goes to the schools, goes to the library, we would be able to go ahead and start selling off the land to owners or to private instead of all being public. You wouldn't have as many fires too, because again, it'd be cleaned to a degree. The last state that actually did that was Mississippi. So if you look at the United States down the middle, if you look over to the east, you're going to find on American Lands Council, they show you a wonderful picture of what is going on because all the western states don't have their land back. Once we get our land back, that's where I love associations to go fight for. Go fight for our lands. Go get it back from Congress. And the way we can do that, then that's going to help so we don't have to dig into our pockets because we're going to be able to have it. That's what we need to do because I believe Navajo County for taxes is anywhere between 5 and 7% that you get, and you get a pelt, which is in lieu of. So the government right now gives the state money, but the whole thing is if we'd go back and go fight for money, no more taxes here, and then these gentlemen and fire and everybody else would be able to go ahead and get the funding that they need. One other last question I would love to know, if you guys could give, is how many retired or retired firefighters do you have that you're paying for, and then how much is that in the budget? If you guys can get back to me, thank you.
Retirees, so full disclosure, right? Timber Mesa Fire Medical District, I shouldn't say all, most fire districts that are full-time in nature, we're part of the public safety retirement system. I believe the police for Pinetop-Lakeside are part of the public safety retirement system. Timber Mesa, we're relatively a young organization, so we don't have a tremendous amount of retirees. Once you retire, Timber Mesa not necessarily paying their wage anymore. They're collecting their pension through that public safety retirement system. We fund that PSPRS system through one of our line items, much like the town does. And there's an associated cost with paying for an employer contribution, and then us as employees pay a contribution to that as well. And then there's always an unfunded portion because of retirees or growth in the system. Timber Mesa's unfunded liability currently sits about $6 million, which across the board is actually very good in comparison to many other fire districts or other municipalities across the state. Does that answer your question? Any other questions?
Council, any other questions? Thank you, gentlemen, for coming tonight.
Thank you so much.
Appreciate it.
Thank you all very much. Thank you, Chief Livermore, Chief Chevalier again, Mayor, council members, thank you. Please urge you, join me in giving back to the firefighters that give so much to us. I appreciate your time again. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. We will move on then on to item D2, which is consider approving the purchase of picnic tables, bleachers, garbage cans, and other items for park improvements. Matt.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Well, what a night. Anyways, I'll try to make it quick and sweet so we can try to make it home at a decent time tonight. Currently, we have been doing our improvement plan over the years, as you guys are well, and if you've read the packet, you'll see all the improvements we've made at Woodland, and I think there's a majority of you here that have got to see the improvements that we've made, some of the paths and some of the great jobs that our staff at Public Works have done. However, we're up against a big time now, and you're all aware that is our next big projects are putting in a water tower at Mountain Meadow and getting rid of the pond and building a parking lot there for the soccer fields. However, before I do that, that's going to wrap up our CIP funding for several years. So I think that it would be appropriate. We had talked about just putting a little money aside every year and trying to buy new picnic tables and so on. I think that we would behoove of ourselves to go ahead and upgrade the final piece to the big part of our parks, which is the picnic tables, the 55-gallon drums as trash cans, get rid of those. And we also don't have enough bleachers for soccer tournaments and other events. So I'm suggesting tonight that we take our $200,000 in 19 or of our capital money, and we put that towards bleachers, garbage cans, picnic tables, and the kiosks, and then we use that this year, and then going into the next couple of years is we won't see a whole lot of development as I'm working on doing those other big parts of the park that need to be done. And then that way we've finished off all the good work that we've completed up to this point with nice fixtures. Any questions?
Questions, comments for Matt? So this would be for both parks or Woodland Park?
Both parks.
So we would replace all the benches, the picnic tables throughout everything.
Yeah, it'll make our jobs a lot easier, as you're aware. The birds enjoy dropping on our tables, and it's hard to clean on the wooden tables. So the concrete tables will give us something that we can pressure wash and try to keep nice for our citizens.
Okay, Councilor Watson?
So looking at the numbers, you have 200,000 in this fiscal year for capital purchases.
Yeah, that was actually part of our improvement plan that, I don't know if, Paul, if you were a part of that when I did that improvement plan. The last piece of that improvement plan added the water tower and putting that parking lot at the end of the soccer fields. So I'm saying we'll hold off on that for a year, because that'll probably take me 2 years to get completed so that we can give our citizens a nice finished product with everything else that we've done at Woodland. Like we've done the ramadas, we've rebuilt them, we've put new tops in them, we've redone the bathrooms, everything over there is pretty much cleaned up and back to the maintenance level it should be.
Okay, so you will take the funding allocated for those improvements, use it for this, I get that, and then next year or year after, you think the capital improvement funds will be able to cover that cost to do that other improvement that you're putting on?
Yeah, currently we were looking at about 300,000 to do the water tower and the parking lot there. So it wasn't going to be quite enough this year, and then I was really going to have to hold out 4 years before I could actually get these get the fixtures like the garbage can and stuff like that back up to what it needs to be.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Councilor Heiser? Oh, I'm sorry, I thought you had a question. Yes, Councilor Buse.
So it looks like the bleachers would be mobile. You're able to move those around as needed in town for other functions and things like that. Is that right?
Exactly. Like our senior softball, we'd be able to move that over to Woodland for that tournament, and vice versa. We can move them to the other, which is what we do now. We just have 4 sets, I believe, or maybe 6.
We have 2 at Mountain Meadow, 4 at Mountain Meadow, and 2 at Woodland.
2 at Woodland. And we're adding 6 more, yeah.
Okay, thanks.
And we could bring those up to watch the Fall Festival Parade?
Yeah, sure, we can move them wherever you want to move them. So, and also the goals, that's another thing of this, is we don't have any soccer goals. We don't own any, so.
Hey, I think this is a great plan. Council, what's your?
I'll make a motion.
Councilor Heisler.
I move to approve moving forward with the plan to purchase the parks improvements as listed and authorize the town manager to execute all documents as needed.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second. Further discussion? Councilor Snitzer.
Second?
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, I had a second down here. I thought you had further discussion.
Oh, okay. I didn't hear the second.
That's okay. All those in favor, please signify by raising your right hand. Thank you. That carries unanimously. Thank you, Matt.
Thank you, Council.
Do you have any idea how long it'll take to get these in?
They haven't been taking that long. It's not been as bad, so
Good.
a couple months we should have it all put in place.
Good. Thank you. We'll look forward to that.
May
Excuse me, Madam.
just like to add here, what we're asking you to do tonight, to be clear, is just basically to obligate this money. So none of this stuff has been ordered, and in fact, some of it may have to be bid. So, you know, what the motion was just to move forward with this plan. So none of this stuff has been ordered yet, and you know, if Keith has authority, then he can sign off on it. If any of it has to be bid, then that will have to be brought back to you.
Okay, thanks for that clarification. Okay, then we'll move on to item D3. This is a public hearing. Yes, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. Could I just say one more thing about to Matt? I walked at Woodland Lake and I was so impressed. The disc golf is really looking like everything's going along well, and the park looks great. So thank you so much.
Thank you. I'm sorry I didn't see you down there. Moving then to item D3, which is a public hearing, discussion, and legal action, considering resolution number 22-1634, approving a major plan amendment to the 2015 general plan land use element. And this is where we do have a small correction to the resolution in the fourth whereas paragraph, recommended with a 3-2 vote. So that is the correction on this one. Jeremiah?
Good evening, Mayor and Vice Mayor and Council. This item coming before you, we've had several public meetings in planning and zoning and now with the council as well. Hopefully the community is apprised of what we're doing and is aware that it's better to plan for the future than to not have a plan. And I hope that the item before you for consideration is a good plan. And I think that the Planning and Zoning Commission put a lot of time into it and effort. And there's never a perfect plan. We can't. I wish there was a perfect plan that I could bring before you that was foolproof and everyone would be happy. But I just don't think that's possible. But what I do think is possible is putting forth a plan that guides us to a path where we can have development and at the same time keep the characteristic of this community that we all know and love. So I went earlier today for nearly 2 hours and went over the changes and everything, and hopefully everyone was in attendance, is still here. So I asked the council to consider this and pass the general plan, major plan amendment, which I'm unaware that we've ever had one before. And with keeping in mind that this isn't written in stone, it could change. Every plan could always benefit from more input from the community, and I appreciate the input that was given tonight. That's pretty much all I have. Is there any questions you guys have?
Thank you. Questions for Jeremiah? No. Okay, this is a public hearing. Is there any member of the public that would like to come address us on this issue? Please identify yourself. Come on up. Identify yourself and go ahead.
My name is Holly Johnson. And I just want to make sure, because as we discussed earlier, that the error that's on this proposed one is corrected before that this is voted on. Because once this is voted on, if it's not corrected, then that's the way it is. And I just want to make sure that everybody's aware that that's incorrect, and he's recognized that. So I just want to make sure that's corrected before it's voted on, if possible.
Thank you, Holly. I'm glad you brought that back up because I was going to mention that to Jeremiah. So yes. Do you want to?
Right, so I think we could address that in a couple of ways. Basically, the only area where there was intent of changes being made are the areas that are clouded on the existing future land use map in red and in gray. And so that area was not, the intent was for it not to be changed. So in the motion, you can either do it two ways. You can say adopt the major amendments identified on the future land use map and the minor amendments in gray and exclude all Scribner's errors, or just specifically exclude that area.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you. Is there any other public comment on this issue? Please come up to the podium. Make sure you state your name for us.
Hi, my name is Donna Sherwin, and thank you for your time. I think this is being a little aggressive personally. I know that he's been doing planning and he's been working on it for months, and there's been public participation, but I just think it's jumping the gun. I think it's being a little too aggressive in the way that, first of all, the map, the future land use map, this is from 2015, the colored one here, that's, it's not even actually correct. I mean, it's not been corrected, and the parcel that's the coat part looks like it's Forest Service, and it's not, and so then we just talked about that at the very end of the last discussion, and it's not even depicting what it is as correct zoning. So it's a little deceptive in my opinion, because you don't really know what the change is going to be. All you see is the proposed future land use map that shows that parcel, and it shows what it wants to be, but it doesn't say what it is. So it's hard to discern without having participated in the work session earlier what it is that's going to be changed from what to what, because this map shows that it's forest. So that's an example. The fire service, they came up and they're saying we're having a hard time, we can't service, we've got people visiting, we can't, the calls are grossly I guess, enlarged or the numbers are increased because we have so many people visiting. And I understand, I had a hotel for 27 years, and I understand people are coming up here to enjoy the area. Arizona's recreation, we are a destination. Tourism is our industry. I understand that, but there's a lot of people up here who are here first, and I think it needs to be considered in a less aggressive way. I think it needs to be considered if it's medium density like it is on the north side of Penron Road, then why are we making that whole thing just loosey-goosey open? There's too many uses that are going to be available for them to come and say, hey, I want to do this. Why not make it something that, again, they have to jump through a hoop for us instead of us just kowtowing to them? And the Brett Coat land is a prime example. And, Airbnb, we want to do Airbnbs, but that's taxing our shelves in the store, and it's taxing our stores, not our stores, our highways capabilities of handling the traffic. And you go to a restaurant and it's a 45-minute wait. I mean, we're building something that we can't handle right now. We don't have the infrastructure, and I think that needs to be taken into consideration. And I don't think moving aggressively and quickly is the plan. I think it should be, we've got a couple years before 2025. Let's revisit this or do it less aggressively. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Is there anybody else that wanted to speak? Okay, seeing none, I'm going to go ahead and close the public hearing. Any other council discussion? I'd entertain a motion then, if we can have Jeremiah's help, I think. Unless, Councilor Snitzer, you're always good at those.
I'd be happy to make the motion, but I'm not sure I can word the correction correctly. So with a little bit of help from my friends, I move to adopt Resolution 22-1634, approving a major plan amendment to the 2015 general plan use element as submitted in this session with the following correction. Take it away.
So the area identified as low-density use on Woodland and Woodland Lake Road should be reflected as low-density use on the proposed future land use map as well.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
Second.
Thank you, Jim and Jeremiah. It's been moved and approved to adopt this resolution. Is there further council discussion? All those in favor, please signify by raising your right hand. Thank you. That carries unanimously. Thank you again, Jeremiah, for all the work, and planning and zoning as well. We'll move on then to item D4, which is reports from council committee liaisons and the town manager. Councilor Krigbaum.
I have no report tonight, Mayor. Thank you.
Councilor Buse.
I don't have a report tonight.
Councilor Heisler.
Just wanted to share at the last meeting with the White Mountain Humane Society that they were very appreciative of our relationship and our continued efforts to work with them and keep those animals safe there. So I just thought I'd share that.
Thank you. Vice Mayor?
Yes, again, I'd like to thank all of the staff, town management and town clerk, all the council members for helping serve lunch at the senior center. We had like over 60 people eating lunch that day, and all of your help was greatly appreciated. And everybody sat at a lot of the different tables, and the community got to visit with the police chief and the town staff and the council members. Thank you, everybody.
Councilor Watson?
No report.
Councilor Snitzer?
I've got a couple for speaking for tracks. They participated in the parade, had a good time, and got a chance to hand out. I don't have a
700.
700. Yeah, I was trying to remember the number. 700 maps to our trails. So those were very much appreciated, I'm sure, by the people that got them. The tour of the White Mountains, the bicycle race was a huge success. Tracks, I don't have a count, but normally we furnish somewhere around 80 volunteers. I don't know if it was that many this year, but we provide a lot of volunteers. The Tracks Trail Crew got the trails ready for the bike. I mean, we work on the trails all summer, but we always paid particular attention in August and September to getting the trails ready for the bicycle race. The trails were in great shape. One of the projects Tracks has is to put out in the forest, they call them bicycle gates. They're really sort of a ramp that goes right next to the existing gate. Wherever there's a gate in the forest, in certain locations, there would be a gate next to it where the bikes can just ride through it. You can actually walk through them yourself too, so you don't have to open and close the gate. But it's a way to make sure the gate stays closed and the cattle stay in, and bikes can just ride through it. The bike riders are a tremendous demographic. They're young, they're wealthy. We love having them in our community, so that was good. So things are going well with Tracks. And then at the White Mountain Nature Center, we had our big annual fundraiser dinner that was a luau. It was sold out. It was really a tremendous time. People enjoyed it. I hope we make it an annual event. I'm going to propose that to the board. The bird shows continue. If you haven't been out there, go out there every day at 3 o'clock at the back of the Nature Center. Just go all the way back. There's a free bird show, and it's well worth going to. Our programs are slowly winding down for winter, but we still have a pretty good roster of programs, and including this coming Saturday evening. Yeah, Saturday evening, we have a talk by one of the Forest Service people, and the construction project that was stalled to build pens for the birds is slowly gearing up again. We've got some building materials that have been delivered. We have a contractor that we believe can do the job properly, and he's been hired. And we arranged all this more than a month ago, but he will not be able to start working due to his schedule until November. But things are moving along at the Nature Center too, so life is good.
Thank you. I don't have anything specific to report, except I would like to thank everybody that made the Fall Festival Parade such a great success. I think that was a beautiful weekend. We were very fortunate with the weather that weekend. Keith.
Yes, Madam Mayor, Vice Mayor Smith, and Town Council. As we come to the end of our summer, and we've had a busy summer, we've had some great events throughout the summer. A lot of the citizens have been able to participate in, and it's also brought tourism to our area to support our local businesses. So as we come to the end, we're looking at this coming Saturday at 9 o'clock, we'll have the Color Run. And so that is a fun family event. It was very well received last year. Everybody had a great time. So it's a 5K, is that right? Or however many laps you're going to make around Woodland Lake itself. And they throw different colors of kind of like cornstarch, colored cornstarch on everybody. It is a great thing. But we may have rain. So if rain is forecast for the day, if it happens to be raining during the event, then we'll have to cancel it. So it is not, it's weather dependent. So keeping our fingers crossed that from 9 o'clock to 10 o'clock, we'll be able to get the run done, and then it can start raining. Lastly, we have our trunk or treat on Saturday, October 29th from 6 to 8 p.m. at the Mountain Meadows Soccer Fields. In the past, with the pandemic, we've had a drive-through Halloween event. This time it's going to be people on their feet and enjoying being able to get out and see the trunks up close and personal. So if you know of a business or an organization that might like to participate with a decorated vehicle or booth, please have them contact Annie or Tony. And we encourage all the businesses to participate. We have about 30,000 pieces of candy to help hand out. Lastly, the community engagement survey will close on October 15th. So please, there is still time to participate. You can find the survey, a link to it, on our town website and also on our town Facebook page. And we've had close to 800 respondents so far. So the last time that we did this, we were at about more than half that, or less than half that participated. So we've had a lot of great responses. We look forward to peeling the onion and getting down to what the community would like to see. what they're interested in. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. There being no other business, this meeting is adjourned. Good night.